stoners. There's hope for you. Yeah.
Wow.
You just heard this in the news. County Commissioner John Fritchey at a press conference today, buttonholed by
What'd
Bill
you call
Cameron.
him?
Buttonholed.
Oh, all right.
Buttonholed by Bill Cameron about the issue of legalizing marijuana in the state of Illinois. Now, the county is sending they're sending one of those non-binding resolution kind of deals to the state legislature and saying, hey, would you guys consider legalizing marijuana? And there's a big press conference today. And John Fritchey, you heard him get assaulted. There's no other word to describe this, but just verbal assault by Bill Cameron is in the studio with us right now to beg for our forgiveness. Now, let me ask you this, Commissioner. What does the county have to do with this, first of all?
Well, the county taxpayers should be keenly interested in this. Every time the Chicago police arrest somebody for simple drug possession, which in Chicago is somewhere between 15 and 20,000 times every year, the county incurs all the costs. Once Chicago police make the arrest, it's the Cook County Sheriff, Cook County Jail, Cook County Court System, our state's attorney, oftentimes our public defenders. So it's costing Cook County taxpayers tens of millions of dollars every year. And the astonishing thing that most people don't realize, upwards of 95% of these cases get dismissed. So we are spending tens of millions of dollars in Cook County tax dollars, and we are leaving tens of thousands of people with an arrest record for no reason, making it that much harder for them to find a job, housing, a number of things along those lines.
And John, of course, hundreds and even thousands of police officers who could be putting their enforcement skills to better use for the people of Chicago and Cook County.
Richard, that's a huge point. One estimate has about 23,000 police man hours being taken up by marijuana arrests. So they go in, take them into the station, do the paperwork, on and on and on. And if you ask most people around the city of Chicago, so there was a recent Gallup poll that showed 58% of Americans across the country favor legalizing marijuana. In Chicago, I'm pretty confident that most people would say we'd rather see our police finding the shooters, keeping the kids safe going to and from school, rather than picking somebody up for smoking a couple joints.
Well, and that's the question, because that becomes the issue, is taking the money out of the profitability out of the marijuana trade, which still is highly profitable for the street gangs, but is, now they're already adjusting to this marketplace, knowing that this could be coming and moving to different drugs, heroin, cocaine, things like that, crystal meth for street gangs in Chicago. All right. So earlier today, it's timely that this happened. Today on Windy City Live, we did a 1 hour special on drug use and rehab and the issues of addiction, and some heartbreaking stories from families who lost their kids to drug abuse. We had a kid who was a heroin addict who's now trying to recover. A guy who 20 years ago was an addict, and now he runs Hazelden in Chicago, the recovery, the rehab facility. And then Jack Riley, who you know from the DEA, he's the special agent in charge of DEA here. And to a person, they say that legalization of marijuana is a bad idea because it is a gateway drug to greater drugs, more so than alcohol, more so than tobacco.
Well, there is no study that I'm aware of that has shown that going to legalization or decriminalization, A, increases drug use for that drug, and B, most recently Sanjay Gupta on CNN said he doesn't see the rationale for cannabis being a Schedule I drug when it's shown time and time again, while there may be an addictive quality to it, far less addictive than either tobacco or alcohol. So all I'm saying is we need to have a consistent policy here. Nobody is going to say that there's no downside to marijuana use, but there's a downside very demonstrated by alcohol use, by tobacco use. Yet, these are, products that have been not just tolerated, but almost glorified in this country for decades. The only difference between the war on drugs and prohibition is that after about 17 years, they had the common sense to realize prohibition wasn't working.
But where do you stop, though? Where do you draw that line, do you think?
Well, I think right now what you want to do, and this is why we're urging to create a task force, not just introduce a bill and try to pass it. Let's take a look. Let's get input from law enforcement officials, medical officials, academics, economists to see what the economic impact would be on the state. We're talking about right now nationally spending billions of dollars every year on these prosecutions and arrests for no reason. So where you stop is, where is the sensible policy for a framework of regulation and taxation and enforcement? In 2005, there was a Harvard economist who put together a paper that was signed off on by 530 noted economists around the country saying Let's tax this, regulate it, and enforce it. We're going to reduce crime. We're going to reduce police costs. We're going to reduce a lot of the problems and educate this. Here, you're a parent. I'm a parent. Everybody knows, and let's just take it down to this level. Nothing makes somebody want to try something more than telling them that they can't.
Absolutely.
So let's educate them about it at the front end.
Do you think, to that point, and as we were doing this today, and again, it's heartbreaking, and there's a repeat tonight, of course, at midnight on ABC7. But
Shameless.
It was shameless, but it's true. It was important because as you listen to the stories of these people, and they have these horror stories about how the drugs obviously impacted mostly heroin, but heroin was, kids started smoking pot. Almost everybody to a man on this panel started smoking pot at the age of 12. And then that was the gateway into stuff. By the time they were 18, they were all on heroin. Now, the question, now obviously that's not the case with everybody. There are certain things, there's certain people I think that are more predisposed to this addiction than others. But there's also the issue of the illicit nature of it. So the illicit nature of alcohol or of marijuana makes you more like, you're going to make connections with drug dealers. You're going to make connections with people that are going to be able to get you heroin or whatever the deal is.
You're forced to associate with that element in order to do this. When you look at those gateway studies, what often gets ignored is how many of those people were drinking alcohol at an early age? How many of them were smoking cigarettes? And think about just the stereotypical young kid that thought he was getting away with something by smoking a cigarette when he wasn't supposed to be. Yeah. So let's remove that stigma and let's look at this in a rational way. The war on drugs has not done anything to lessen people's desires to want to smoke marijuana. It hasn't lessened the influx of the drug coming into the country or being grown in the country. So whatever we have been doing hasn't worked. And after 40 years, it's time for a new approach.
All right. John Fritchey's with us. 591-8900 is your telephone number. Wondering if, John, you would like Bill Cameron to be indicted on charges of assault or what would you like after he asked you if you're only doing this so you could smoke marijuana?
What goes around comes around. But
I think he just threatened you, Bill Cameron. He just called this a small town. What does that mean? All right, we'll be right back at 591-8900. All right, we're getting stoned with the politicians. John Fritchey is here. He's a county commissioner. And he had a press conference today, rollicking press conference, in which he was asked to defend his position that the state of Illinois there should be a commission to study making marijuana completely legal in the state of Illinois. And I'm interested in this. If you had your druthers, if we can make you king of Illinois, not that you perish the thought.
I'm Bill Cameron. I don't think that's a good idea.
Actually, John doesn't even think that's a good idea.
No,
but if you were king of Illinois, would you make it legal?
I would. And I don't think it's a question of if it's going to happen. It's a question of when it's going to happen. But when you look at everything from the economic benefits to the state to reducing the cost that it's giving us right now for no reason, the racial disparity, over 3/4 of the people that get arrested for marijuana possession tend to be minorities, even though all the studies show that usage among racial groups is the same. I think that it's a matter of having common sense. Again, in 40 years of trying to do everything we can to crack down on drug use and crack down on marijuana use, numbers have gone up, arrests have gone up, everything has gone up except for, the fact that we are not benefiting this and we're not regulating it.
Mitch, you're on WLS. Hi, Mitch.
Well, there's one thing that doesn't go up when you're on pod, but anyway. So
is that true?
Wow. I don't know. Ask John. Bill Cameron seems to think John knows. Go ahead.
Sorry. So do the reverse math on this. Let's say for alcohol, if you were to say alcohol is not legal now, what would be your argument to make it legal? So, why is it legal now? So for those naysayers of legalizing marijuana, that would be an argument I would say would hold some water. And secondly, the research that they're doing, is it very validated, because they say that those 12-year-old kids were smoking pot and then it was a gateway drug. They were probably an addictive personality, and maybe they were drinking cough syrup too. They were just out there. I think you alluded to it.
It's interesting. It's a really interesting point you bring up, Mitch. If alcohol were illegal today, how would you, if you go to Saudi Arabia, what's the argument for making it legal? I mean, obviously there's a whole religious component to that there, but in places in which alcohol is illegal to possess or to imbibe, where how, given the destructive nature of that that chemical, how could you make an argument morally that it's okay? The reason we did it was the reason that we reversed the temperance movement was because it was creating such an immense amount of trouble on the street in terms of crime and law enforcement and the kind of murder that goes on and mayhem that goes on in the streets now as a result of illicit drugs. It's the same sort of thing. But I just don't know. I mean, marijuana is going to take some of the cash away from the gangs and from these, the narco terrorists of Central and South America that are involved in this. But they have plenty of other stuff, and you're never going to make heroin legal, right? You're never going to make cocaine legal.
And I don't think that anybody would ever suggest that. Maybe some, libertarians off on the far edge of the spectrum there.
Of the flat earth.
Of the ranch where the cattle are grazing.
Hey, wait a second.
What happened?
All right, Danielle, you're on WOLS. Hello, Danielle.
Hi, I love your show, by the way.
Thank you.
And
We
I
love
just wanted
you.
to say that I think this is a no-brainer. I'm a biochemist, and I think it's no worse than alcohol or cigarettes. And the police could, instead of busting people with this, have more time to go after the real, people selling heroin, which is really devastating. I mean, and the education is really where it's at. I know plenty of people who have tried marijuana and never went on to even think about trying heroin, and I just think it's a no-brainer.
Well, now it's interesting because they could go after the people selling heroin. They are. I mean, it's not like the police are saying we're only going after marijuana. They are going after all of it. They just happen to catch people holding more marijuana than they do anything else, right?
Well, and if I get at it, it's not a matter of having people going after people that are smoking pot as opposed to people that are doing heroin. It's a matter of saying, let's take the 23,000 man hours that they're using to process these marijuana arrests, and again, have them go after gang members, have them go after shooters, go after the gun offenses and the murders that we're reading about every day in the papers.
Can I also just quickly inject, I want to ask the guys in control room, can you get the number of the attractive-sounding pro-marijuana biochemist, please? I need to talk to her about a research project I'm working on. Thank you very much. Sorry, side note there, guys.
Sometimes they don't look how they sound. Vinny, you're on WLS. Hey, Vinny. Play Misty for me.
Yeah. You know what? This is still going to there's still going to be a black market because there's got two factors. You're going to tax it, and it's going to be very expensive. So you're going to go to the alternate market like you do with cigarettes. You can buy cigarettes at any gas station for half the price of what the gas station is selling them because there's a market for it because they're doing it without taxes by getting them out of state or getting them from overseas. I mean, just recently was a study in New York that showed 47% of all cigarette sales are illicit. The other thing is potency. You're going to have skunk, you're going to have hydro, which the government probably will not be providing because they're not going to want 800 times the THC levels of what they're going to probably be allowing.
Now, that's really interesting. Skunk weed, sir, please, really? 1978 reference. There is, you call it ditchweed. There seems to me to be, it's an interesting thing that you're bringing up, but in Colorado, for example, they have all forms of THC and California as well. California rules are a little bit different here, but they're doing it through the medical system, and they're like, okay, what do you need? It's like the difference between having 5 milligrams of Valium or 15 milligrams of Valium, right?
Well, and with respect to medical marijuana, what you're seeing in those other states, and keep in mind, we now have about 20 states that have legalized medical marijuana in one shape or another.
Including us.
They may have 30 different strains, and they say, if you're suffering from MS, you may want this. If you're suffering from Crohn's, you may want this. If you want something that's going to help you sleep, this.
Well, and that's the thing in California. They're the head. You want a head or body and all the rest of it. And it's all kind of crap. And the thing about Colorado, they've dispensed with all of that. And they're just sort of like, yeah, whatever. You want to get stoned? Here's what it is. Mm-hmm. Here's what we're selling you. And as opposed to the sort of kabuki of it's all about medicine, because the vast majority of people are not going. The vast 99% of the people who are signing up for this, and will in Illinois as well when it becomes available next year. It's legal now, but it will become available next year. And look at all the people that are going in trying to grow the marijuana here.
But again, you'd rather have that happen under a regulated framework. So when you're talking about the dollars, it's again, $9 billion in savings on the judicial system, hundreds of millions of dollars. Colorado anticipates making close to $250 million over the first year and a half, and we're almost twice their size.
Yes, and we eat twice as much as well. All right, John, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate
County Commissioner John Fritchey.